Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Hi, Joanna. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Joanna Shupe. I write historical romance set in Gilded Age New York City. And a little bit in Newport, but mostly New York City. Let's see, I've been doing this crazy writers thing. I've been published. My first book came out in 2015. And I landed my publishing contract in 2013. So, you know, it's almost been 10 years for me that I've been doing this crazy writers thing. I live in New Jersey. I have 2 daughters and yeah, that's about it.
I love this. Yeah, I used to live in New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey for 12 years. I just moved this past year. So I love chatting with fellow New Jersey, and have some New York connections. So I love that you write about New York in historical romance.
Yeah, I'm 30 minutes outside New York City. So yeah. I mean, I'm there, before the pandemic, I was there, I don't know, once a month.
Yeah.
And I just would go all the time. And I lived in New York City for 10 years. Before that, I lived in Chicago for 7, which is also like a great Gilded Age city. So I feel like, I'm kind of a city girl at heart, which is why I love writing books, set in New York City at the turn of the century.
I love this. So I just moved to Chicago. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah. I moved to Chicago right before the pandemic, like 2 weeks before the pandemic started. So I haven't seen Chicago, but it's a nice city.
It's amazing. I miss it so much. I have so many good friends that are still there and I miss it. I don't get back nearly as much as I'd like. Yeah. I swear some of the best meals I've ever had in my life were in Chicago. It was a blast.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm discovering Chicago. I think that's like the goal, hopefully after the pandemic, to discover a new city. But yeah, I live 15 minutes away from New York City in Jersey. I love New Jersey. I love Jersey City. That was like a great place to be. And I work in New York for that long, for 14 years. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
But you're a city girl too.
I am a city girl. Yeah. I think so, because I live in DC before that. So I have been living in the city, for 17 years. So yeah. So, and I love reading about the city, just getting books set in the city, just kind of like just going with it. So
yeah.
Were you a romance reader before you become a romance writer, or was it something you just landed into the writing?
No, I've been a romance reader I started reading really young. Like 10, 11, 12. I used to spend every summer with my grandmother down in Kentucky. And, there wasn't a lot to do for us young kids, sort of in the evenings. And my grandmother was a huge romance reader. Mm-hmm. One of her favorite romance authors was Sabrina Jeffries. She had all the Sabrina Jeffries books. And she, this was back like when the old school Johanna Lindsey and Julie Garwoods and sort of that era. And she had, Catherine Woodowitz, she had all of those books in her library. And I just, would go poke around in there. And that is what started sort of my obsession with reading romance. And so I started really young and just kept reading. And I've sort of always wanted to be a writer. I went to college as a journalism major and thought I would go into sports journalism. Ended up kind of in entertainment marketing, like theater and sports marketing. Mm-hmm. From there, I went to work at a tech company, kind of doing more project management and, like simple coding and stuff, and a little bit of graphic design. So I sort of fell out of using my writing skills a little bit and then was dying to get back into it. And when I graduated college, I was living at home and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was reading romance novels just, I mean, as fast as I could. I mean, I would read, one every 2 days.
Mhm.
And my oldest sister said, you should try to write one of those. It can't be hard.
Mhm.
Famous last words. And I was like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I probably could. That would be fun. And she said, I'll sit down and help you think of the plot. And then you can just write it. Because the plot obviously has to be the hardest thing.
Mhm.
Well, little did we know. But so I was waiting tables at the time, and I would come home from working at the restaurant at like 1:30 in the morning. I would sit down at my little, very early electronic typewriter and type until like maybe 4 or 4:30. And then
Mhm.
I would sleep until noon and then get up and go to the restaurant. And it was just this cycle every single night until I had this finished manuscript. And I loved it. It was such a great, fun thing to do. And
Mhm.
when my sister read it, she, I think, gave me the best compliment that really it gave me the confidence to say, well, wow, maybe I really can do this. When my sister finally read it, she said, I don't know where you came up with half the stuff that's in here. It's amazing.
Mm.
Just the creativity of it, that I had taken her ideas, that we had talked about together, and I had sort of woven like this real world from it. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I can really do this. And I put that manuscript away because then at that point I went to go live in Chicago and, get a quote unquote real job. And
Mhm.
I had this manuscript under the bed. And then years later, I was dating my now husband,
Mhm.
and I was in a job that I was just absolutely miserable in. I'm now in New York. I've gone from Chicago to New York, and I've met him, which was great, but I was in a job that I absolutely hated. And it
Mhm.
was just one of those just really toxic work environments that just sucks your will to live. And I would just, I would come home from work and I would lay around just misery. And he said, is there anything you could do that, would make you happy? Like, is there any kind of a hobby you've ever wanted to pursue? Like, I hate seeing you like this. And is there anything that might bring you joy other than just like laying around and thinking about this miserable job? And I said, well, actually, I wrote a romance novel a few years ago, and someday I'm thinking about getting it out and polishing it up and trying to sell it. And I kind of expected him to laugh because, romance was not his wheelhouse, but he didn't. He he in his former life had published a music magazine, and he has like all this writing and editing experience, and he said, I think that's amazing, let's get it out, I'm going to help you edit it, and you're going to sell it. And I was like, okay, let's let's do it. So sure enough, like I found all like the story was so old that it was on like hard disks
Oh my
from
gosh.
my old computer. So I got like all the hard disks, I put them together, I like printed the story out, and he started working with me on editing it. And it just ended up that like the story will never see the light of day, but I really loved the process of it. I loved the original writing of it. I loved like the editing of it. I just thought it was really a great like creative outlet for my brain. And it ended up that I I did end up pitching the story to the agent that I wanted. She ended up turning it down. Um, and but she gave me really amazing notes on it. And by
Mhm.
that time, I was in New Jersey, and we had just moved to New Jersey, and I had joined the New Jersey Romance Writers,
Mhm.
which is the Romance Writers of America, the New Jersey chapter. And so I knew like a little bit more about like the business, and like I was learning about craft, and I was learning it just I was soaking up just as much as I absolutely could. And so when she turned down that original historical that I wrote, right out of college, I said, but she gave me all these great notes, and I said, "Thank you so much. I'm actually working on another story that I think you really might like," because it was kind of on the spicy end, and I felt like a lot of her clients were on the spicy end.
Mhm.
And I said, "So I'm going to send it to you when it's done." And sure enough, when it was done, I sent it off, and she, you know, I think possibly I recognized my name in her inbox as somebody that she had, read um, something for before, because I got like a very fast response that was like, "Send me the rest of this, please. I would like to read it all." And within a day, she called me and said, "I loved the story, and, let's try to sell it together." So that's like a very long-winded
I love
explanation of how it all happened.
I love this so much. I love the fact that you just like you you use writing as a way to escape a toxic work environment, and
Yeah, that's how it started.
yeah, and like, sometimes that's how it is. Like sometimes we just need that creative outlet. Like for me, I found like some of the stuff that I've done, it's because I was trying to escape some toxic work environment,
Yeah,
like and
yeah.
then like and seeing it grow and seeing the little siblings, the little seed, like it just grew into something different, a new career, a new change, you
Yeah,
know.
and you need something for yourself. I mean, I think that was like, none of us should be really defined by the jobs that we hold. There should be more to our lives than than just like, kind of where you collect a paycheck. Like,
Mhm.
some people do have a passionate, day job, and I think that's amazing. I was not one of them. So for me, there had to be something for me to just be able to find something for myself and something that just brought me joy. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
I love this. And so, did you always wanted to write historical, or did you dabble into contemporary or any other genres?
So I have written a contemporary manuscript, and it will never, I'm sure, see the light of day. My voice, my entry into his romance was the historicals, the Julie
Mhm.
Garwoods, the um, Jude Devereaux's, the Judith McNaught, that is all my gateway into romance. And
Mhm.
that's what imprinted on me as a very young age. And I feel like when I write, because of my love of historical romance plus the journalism, my
Mhm.
writing tends to be very uh flat, sort of what's the opposite of flowery, like very to the point.
Yeah.
And um very, I use a lot of nevertheless and therefore and moreover. It's very I don't like dry almost.
Mhm.
So when I write contemporary, I just don't think I have the voice for it. I think my mind, the way that these stories come out is just, it just feels historical to me. I don't know. I can't describe it,
Yeah.
but never say never, never say never. But I really and I love history. I mean,
Yeah.
I find something an interesting, research tidbit, and I'm down the rabbit hole, and that's what gets me so excited. Is
Mm.
just finding like a little nugget that I can base a whole story on.
I love this. And so let's talk about Gilded Age because this is a you have a unique market. You've been able to hone in a market that, it's not growing, but it's like it started. So what inspired you to write Gilded Age as opposed to Regency or Victorian or British and just set in Americas, but in this period of time that's not Western?
Yeah, I have to admit, and I'm probably am, one of the few historical romance authors that you will hear say that I did not read Jane Austen as as a young girl.
Yeah.
I didn't read Austen until I was in my mid 30s.
Okay.
It just never, I just didn't.
Yeah.
I read Edith Wharton, and I
Oh, okay.
love like all of that, the angst, the society clashes, the wealth, I mean, for me, that just was my catnip.
Mm.
Um, I I just really wanted, I think, the Age of Innocence to end up happily. like
Mhm.
I mean, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read The Age of Innocence, it is not a happily ever after, but it is a love story. And I always wanted that so desperately to be a happy ending. So for me, I just I always gravitated towards New York towards the end of the 19th century. I had relatives that came through Ellis Island.
Mhm.
Um, I visited New York a lot because I had an aunt that lived out in Brooklyn and Park Slope, and so we visited, and I got to see like all the craziness of New York City in the 80s, and I just
Mhm.
really, I just loved it. And yeah, so for me, it's Edith Wharton as opposed to Jane Austen, which I think a lot of the Regency authors would say was a big, or Hare, and I've never read Georgette Hare. I've never read
Mhm.
any of those books. Um, so for me, I fell in love with the American history, really.
Mhm. And so tell us, for those who are new to the genre or new to Gilded Age New York, what is unique about Gilded Age New York that you may only see it in this particular time frame that
So what I love about the Gilded Age is, so it's the late 19th century in
Mhm.
America, and it mostly focuses on the big cities.
Mhm.
Um, it's also called the Progressive Age. It's, in Europe, it's sort of the industrial age. It's really when we see America as we know it today really take shape.
Mhm.
Um, as far as the technology, we start to see telephones, telegraphs, electricity, trains, cars, subways. We
Mhm.
start seeing um, all this crazy wealth, the accumulation of wealth at the top,
Mhm.
which leads to a tragic and fascinating uh, dichotomy with those at the bottom of the economic ladder.
Mhm.
And so we see this great disparity in wealth, and by great I don't mean awesome, I mean vast.
Yeah.
And uh, we also see women start to gain more independence in the late 19th century, which we hadn't seen before. So,
Mhm.
because of now we have department stores, we
Mhm.
have offices, we have bicycles, we have streetcars. We have boarding houses. Young women start to move off their family farm and move into the big cities where they can now support themselves. They
Mhm.
can get around. Um, and we hadn't seen that before. Before that, you would have lived on your family's farm until, a boy from a neighboring farm, you were either, an arranged marriage, or you met and then you decided to get married, and then you would have gone to live on another farm. I mean, it was a very agricultural society until sort of right after the Civil War. And so, the advent of railroads that allowed people to move much more easily within America. So we see women really start to gain independence in the late 19th century. And that to me is one of the most fascinating things, because I can look back at, all of those early pioneers that we never hear about today because,
Mhm.
history is recorded by, white men, and we don't hear about a lot of people of color. We don't hear about a lot of women. So that for me is really interesting to sort of dig into that history and find things that I can use for stories.
Yeah, I love how your books take me to a time where it's like you didn't think, you assumed it's always been this way, but it just started in 1990 or 1895. Like, I think the Ladies Miracle Mile, like the window display, like we take it for granted, but that started during that period.
Right, right.
Take for granted that started during that period. And so
Yeah.
it was great to just be reminded, like, get a history lesson with a little bit of romance.
Right. I mean, I try not to overwhelm people with a lot of, dense historical facts and because I want some kind of pat on the back for my research, which I totally don't. I want it to find things that make stories, fun.
Mhm.
The window research was really fascinating. Like you know, who knew? I mean, but yeah, that's when those holiday window displays started, was in the Gilded Age because department stores were just really on the rise after the Civil War and became a really big deal because now women were out in public, they were looking for things to do. They would go out. That was a social activity for them. Department stores were one of the first places where women could go out in America and eat in public, with each other without a man.
Mhm.
They also, they had restrooms, which a lot of places in the city didn't
Mhm.
have, because why would anybody need those? Because women aren't out and about.
Yeah.
So it really is like a fascinating, you know, um, it's fascinating to look at how sort of one thing leads to another. And
Mhm.
the obviously the windows were to draw attention and to bring customers to the store,
Mhm.
and it worked.
It did. And it still works. We still get
Yeah, right. It still worked.
we still get those window displays. So
Yeah.
I love this. So let's talk about the Harris Hunt. It's a brand new series. We get to it takes place in New York, but we get to see Newport, which is exciting. So talk to us about what was the source of inspiration, and then what can we expect for the series?
So, um, so the previous series, which is the Uptown Girls, was really kind of it was uptown women with downtown men.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to do the same thing, and I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit, but um, I wanted to keep the sense of like a bad boy hero, kind of like the outsider bad boy hero.
Yeah.
And so I the name of the series is the Fifth Avenue Rebels,
Mm-hmm.
and it's four heroes who these four friends in college who all sort of bond because their fathers are all terrible, and they
Mm-hmm.
each deal with that in different ways. One of them becomes kind of a rake who doesn't take anything seriously. One of them um, pushes back, like on every, like stands his ground and kind of pushes back on everything. And Harrison, who's the hero of the Heiress hunt, happens to leave. He leaves New York City for Paris, and he's gone for a couple years. So the idea for the book was, I love reunited I love a second chance romance. I love a childhood friends to lovers romance, and this was sort of my swing at combining those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people have been asking me for years, when, please write something set in Newport. Like, when are we going to see more of Newport? I've had Newport in like a couple books, like kind of just as a, kind of a throwaway scene or two,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people really were wanting to see a book, you know, more of Newport. So I didn't want to set the entire book in Newport, but I think the Heiress Hunt, half of it takes place in Newport, and the second book, which is The Lady Gets Lucky, also it takes place concurrently to the Heiress Hunt,
Mm-hmm.
and half of it is in Newport. So you'll get a lot of Newport in the series and some New York City. I mean, it's kind of like half and half.
Yeah, I love the fact that we got to see the summer homes, like the big houses in Newport, and then you just go back to the city and you get to that. And we were in Philly too, because we had the tennis competition. So,
Right, right. So also in the late 19th century, in the Gilded Age, we start to really see um, sports go from being kind of this amateur pastime into something that people actually did for money and for, we see golf, we see baseball,
mhm.
and tennis really become like these organized professional sports. And so I love sports, I love tennis, and I just thought that would be a really interesting look at what it would have been like for one of these women who, Maddie loves tennis and she's really good at it,
Mhm.
and she kind of persuades her family to let her take a real shot at it, like,
Mhm.
let me really go play and see how well I can do.
Mhm.
And I just thought that that it was interesting to see, a woman pursuing a sport as opposed to maybe, a man, um, really, really pushing for a career in the heiress hunt. It's really her that is um, trying to succeed professionally.
Yeah, I really love that storyline of Maddie, like just in the process of being, an athlete, like the training that she goes through, the expectations that she has to go through, for her to go and to be, an elite athlete at that time period, which was I felt that it was like a really fun, unique aspect of it that I haven't seen in other books, which is fine.
Oh, good. I mean, I tried to keep it kind of tennis light because I know, sports are not everybody's thing, and tennis, it's not everybody's thing, and some people
Yeah.
find it confusing. So I kind of tried to keep it a little tennis light, as far as like explaining kind of, the rules and like the
Yeah.
games and stuff. But hopefully I put enough in there to make it fun.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like a sports romance too. Like if we think of like contemporaries, like in sports romance, or there's a little bit of tennis, that we typically don't see in historical romance. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. So and then the second book, when is the next book coming out?
So the second book is October, and
Oh.
it's called The Lady Gets Lucky. And it is, yeah, it takes place concurrently with the heiress hunt. So you'll get to see like a little bit more of sort of what's going on behind the scenes with Harrison, because the hero of the second book is Kit, which is Harrison's BFF. So and it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun writing that one. It's basically like a kissing lessons story.
Ooh, I am so excited. By the way, I love this whole bachelor dating pool that you had going on in the Harris Hunt. Like
Yeah, I mean it's kind of The Bachelor set in Newport, which
yeah,
is how I describe the heiress hunt.
yeah, I love it. I was like, it's just like The Bachelor. There's like different datings,
Yeah, and they play like different games, and it's all about getting to know him, and
Yeah.
showing
Yes.
yourself off to your best advantage. And but
Yeah.
really none of them know that he's already settled
Yeah.
on who he wants.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love this. So let's chat some book recommendations. So, which authors are some of your autobi authors you can write the grocery list and you're like, I'm already buying the book?
I read I read very widely. I read a ton. I tend the books that I think stay with me the most, that like my auto by authors, are like the authors that are really gifted wordsmiths. I always say like Kate Claiborne, Sonali Dev,
Mhm.
Sarah McLean,
Mhm.
Kennedy Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, they they know how to craft a sentence. I mean, the word choice is just exceptional. You get all the feels like in every single sentence. And I mean, those are like, when I read their works, I'm like, I'm giving up writing. Like, clearly I will never ever be up here at this pinnacle and be able to write like these ladies do. I should just give up. But yeah, I mean, all of their book, I mean, those are, Sierra Simone is another one that's in that same group. So those are like my auto-buy authors, where I know I'm going to buy it. I'm going to sit down and just, you can't skip a word, because it's all just too delicious.
Yes, I agree. I agree with your recommendation. And there are also my auto-buy authors. So I love this. And so what has been a book you read this past year or last year that you can't stop gushing about?
So, I mean, there have been a lot. I mean, I probably would mention two. I loved Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. That was one of my favorite books last year. I mean, it was one of those books where you just laugh, you cry. I mean, I don't think anybody writes like Alexis does. And that was a book that, I mean, I finished it and then immediately started to reread it because I just thought it was so fantastic. The other thing in 2020 that like saved my sanity were the Jessa Kane books. I don't know if you've read Jessa Kane.
Yeah, it's on my to-do list. So tell me more.
They are totally bananas. They are very short and very hot. Ooh. And you know exactly from the title of the book what you are getting. I mean, the covers are perfect. The titles are perfect. Like the gangster's masseuse. Okay. Like, you know exactly what you're getting, his prize pupil, suddenly his. I mean, it's like you just immediately, and every single one just starts with a bang and like never lets up. And they're just like candy. That was for me in 2020. I mean, I read every single Jessa Kane book that has been out, and I just adore them.
Oh my gosh, I have to pick them up. But yeah, I had them. I keep hearing about them in the pandemic, and it's like one of those secrets. Like, you should definitely read these books just because they're bananas. And so I just haven't gotten around to it. But now you add it, and I'm like,
you will love them. Yeah. You will I mean, and the great thing is there's a Jessa Kane for everybody. Like if like the male, female stuff is too hot, then you've got like a sweeter kind of, like a queen and her prison guard. I mean, it's like, it just runs the gamut. Like, there's literally something for everybody.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I just finished reading some Nikki Sloan, and I was like, I just need like.
Oh, which one?
The Pool Boy and the Doctor.
And which one?
The Doctor and the Pool Boys and National Neighbors. And I'm just reading Filthy Rich Americans.
Oh my God, my favorite.
Yeah, I was like, I remember telling my community, I was like, I'm feeling like reading some Nikki Sloan. Like, I read her a few years ago and I loved it. And I was like, I haven't picked her up. And so one of them was like, just read The Pool Boy. I was like, I do own it. And I'm like, I'm going to read it. I read it in one sitting and I was like, I need to just devour the next book.
Yes. Yeah. I love all of those books. The McAllister book is one of my all-time favorite books ever. I mean, I can't even, like, that book was so good. And she has another one in the Nashville series coming out, I think at the end of January.
It's a menage. I could confirm it's a menage. It's a male female polyamory.
Wait, this is The Architect.
Yep, The Architect. Yeah.
God, I can't wait. When does it come out?
It comes out next month because I went to her PR publicist and I was like, I need to talk to Nikki. And I need an arc. And so we're working on getting her to come on the show. And so I was like, I need to know like what to expect. Like I got a teaser on the synopsis, but I want to know. Like,
oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so it just sounds so good. I was like, we're talking with the politician. She was like, I don't know about that neighborhood, but that neighborhood seems to be,
it's a wild neighborhood. I want to live in that. I want to live in that neighborhood.
I want to live in that neighborhood, except Judy, the HOA, you know?
Right. No, I love, love, love all of her books. I mean, she's very, I mean, she holds nothing back. She goes for it she takes a big swing every time. And as an author, you know, I do try to give the reader something they've never read before in every single book. And so I always appreciate it when authors do that, when they try to sort of write outside the lines. And I think Nikki does that really well.
Yeah, she does. So, oh my gosh. I'm so glad. So now I have Jessica Kane to read next.
Now, if you like Nikki Sloan, you're going to love Jessica Kane.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. So tell us where you can find you online.
Oh goodness, I'm everywhere. I'm on Twitter, I'm at Joanna Shupe. On Instagram, I'm at Joanna Shupe. I'm Joanna Shupe author on Facebook. My website is joannashupe.com. And I send out like a monthly newsletter full of like Gilded Age historical tidbits and pictures of clothing and fun stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanna, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Laura. This was fun.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support this podcast. Once you connect with fellow romance readers and make new friends, get weekly book recommendations, attend monthly meetups, then join our Patreon community. You can join at whattoreadnextblog.com/Patreon. Romance lovers, check out Queen Bee Reads Etsy shop for cute and comfortable bookish apparel. The shop also features social justice apparel and fun items from some of your favorite TV shows like The Schitt's Creek and The Office. Use code WhatToRead10 to save. Visit whattoreadnextblog.com/QueenBeeReads. What to Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Discover new podcasts to love on frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.